so for the very first thing, before we even jump into the game, we need to make sure that we have our Photon IDs. So we need to actually create a voice app. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in. Okay, so I actually have a voice chat already set up here, but let's create a new one. Okay, so now we have that voice chat created, and here it's going to give us an ID. So we're going to take this ID and we're going to copy it. Now let's hop over to Unity. So here in Unity, let's try to add it in here. First of all, if I go to Highlight Server Settings, you'll see that I have an App ID voice. Now by default, this is not going to be available to you. So in order to get this, let's go to the Asset Store. So here in the Asset Store, let's search for Photon, if I can spell it right, Photon Voice. And here we have Photon Voice 2, so let's go ahead and click that. And then let's go ahead and import this. Okay, so after that has been imported, come back over here to your server settings and paste it into your App ID voice, and you will be ready to go. Okay, so here I am in a scene, and I want to add voice chat support to my players in the scene and the scene itself. So the very first thing to do is we need to add chat, voice, add room voice chat. And it will tell you that the recorder has been successfully added to the scene. And then also that we need to make sure that each player has this voice chat component on them as well, and that they're marked as player with the appropriate components. So here, the voice chat is added to the network manager. And if there's no network manager, you'll receive an error here when you try to add it. And let's have a look at this real quick. So this voice chat component, while it looks like it has a lot of that, actually quite simple. So the very first thing we see is that this is marked as not a player, debugging is false, and that there is a default recording image here for you. So this recording image is this simple icon that will appear when you're talking. And then whether or not you want to have push to talk enabled or not, if I disable push to talk, then what that does is basically it's going to detect my voice and it's going to transmit based on when I'm talking. Or you can say, I only want it to transmit when I am pressing the, in this example, talk button. And again, this list that is available here is the list that is in your input in your project settings. And here I have a talk input, which I have marked as the button V. So when I'm pressing V, I will talk. And then there's a couple of things in here that you need to be aware of. So the Photon Voice Network, the auto connect and join and auto leave and disconnect, I can't think of a situation you'd ever want to disable these. What this is going to do is it's automatically going to connect to a voice chat room when you join a Photon room. And then this is going to automatically leave and disconnect from your voice chat when you leave a Photon room. So as you can see, I can't think of a situation you ever want to disable these. You don't want to create a speaker if not found, because if it's not found, then there's an error during the setup and we want to find that. If you're doing some sort of debugging, it's best to put this to all. And you can read all about all of this on the Photons page. And again, if you want to use something other than the Photon server settings, then you can click that here and choose that option. Now the recorder, kind of the same thing. We want the React on system changes to be enabled. And these settings here, this transmit enabled, it's not too important since this voice chat component is going to control it. And this auto start, we want that to be true. And then whether or not you want to start with voice chat being as encrypted, and then basically a number between 0 and 255. This represents the room you're going to subscribe to when you're talking. And then this debug echo, leave that false, because that's going to be defined here as when you enable this debug settings. And again, feel free to read through the Unity documentation, the Photon documentation on this one about each of these settings. And I have my headset enabled here, and it's obviously the only one that I have that can talk. And then now let's go ahead and set up voice chat support for a player. So I have this player here that's already been set up with voice chat, but I'm going to go ahead and act like I'm setting up the player for the very first time. So here's the original player that hasn't been converted to multiplayer at all. So I can come up to here, and again, you can do it through the main menu, and you could say convert player, and it will bring up this menu. But if you just want to go directly to it, you could say convert players, and it will bring up the menu directly. And I've added a new bar here where it says add voice chat support on top of add a player name bar. So you can choose whether or not you want to add voice chat support to your players or not. And the same thing. So let's go ahead and convert. And I'm actually going to go overwrite because I already have a player. So I'm going to just overwrite him. So that was successful. And you can read all about it in this log. And I'm going to go up here to the network manager, click it so it highlights him. Let's have a look. Okay, so the voice chat there is there. So the overwrite was successful. And it gets a little confused sometimes when you overwrite with the same one. So I'm going to go ahead and drag him into the scene. And then you can see that the prefab's connected. So here, let's have a look at voice chat. You see there's a lot less options because if you select that it's a player, you need to add some different components. You need to add a Photon voice view, and you also need to add a speaker. And by adding a speaker, it's going to automatically add an audio source. So this speaker, this speaking image, that's this little, that's this little image here. It's these little speaking icons. That's going to turn on when it recognizes that it's receiving voice over the network. So this will transmit to other players over the network when you're talking. So basically your networked player will display this. Now if debug mode is enabled, this will play locally for you as well. We'll have a look at that a little bit later. So this Photon voice view, you don't want to add the recorder in use. That's going to be found dynamically. And that recorder is, if we go back to this voice recorder, that's this recorder component. So it'll be found at runtime. And I would just suggest leave this as default, but again, go ahead and read the documentation on each of these as to what you want to do. And then I've added a helpful box here to, if you're setting this up manually, if it is for a player, set up a speaker and a Photon view component. And then something that is actually very simple. Let's say I want to add proximity base. So I only want to hear this guy talking if I'm close to him. Set this to 3D. If I want to hear it worldwide or basically room wide, then you set it to 0. And then anyone will be able to hear it when the voice is played. So let's go ahead and disable him. And in fact, before we do that, I want to run some tests to make sure everything is set up okay. So let's disable him and reperform those tests. Okay, he has debug window enabled. So let's go ahead and disable that. Okay, let's reperform that test. Okay, and just tells me to disable, so I'm good to go. All right, so voice chat has been enabled to the scene. So let's go ahead and play this. But before doing so, let's say I'm debugging and I want to be able to hear my own voice. So let's click debug, and that's going to do a series of settings for us when we click start. So let's bring this in here and click play. And you'll see here that since debugging is enabled, it's going to tell me everything that's happening with voice. It'll tell me I'm connected to the name server, authenticating, joining a room, authenticating with a master server, and then I'm joining that room. So I also have text chat enabled. So remember, this is this has push to talk enabled. I have the game muted right now, but you'll be able to see all the icons. So I'm going to click V and start talking. This is a test. Hello, 1, 2, 3. So you'll see that icon is appearing here in the lower corner. It's indicating that it's recording me, but it's also playing this because it has debug echo enabled, and that's setting here, and that's all set at runtime. When you click debug, it sets all those settings for you. So if I disable that and I click play, it's not going to play those little voice icons because there's no point in playing your own voice to yourself unless you're debugging. So it's still transmitting my voice over the network. Hello, this is a test. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 test. So you'll see that the voice is getting recorded, but it's not playing it locally. So let's actually build it and see how it looks over the network. Okay, so I'm in the room. So let's go ahead and turn this on. Remember, I have push to talk enabled, so you'll see no voice is getting transmitted over the network because I'm not pressing that voice chat button. So let's go ahead and press that voice chat button. Hello, this is a test. And you'll see that on the player on the left, I have that highlighted, and it says it's recording there. But the player on the right, you'll see that the voice is getting played. Hello, this is 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3.